Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you're actually getting some sound here on YouTube. I've got to turn my monitoring off here. It's very delayed and it's really annoying. Give me a second. There we go. Of course, now I can't hear myself, but that's probably better. So awesome. There's a few people here. Super good. Hey, thanks, Joanne. You can hear me. That's great to know. Welcome to all of you. You're very brave souls. This is the first time I've ever live streamed anything. So God only knows what will happen, what will go wrong. But hopefully we can have fun, talk a little audio here, and get everyone on the right track, getting them set up for the situation we all find ourselves in of late. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm not a big fan of long introductions on podcasts or YouTube videos, so I wanted to start out today talking about the goal for tonight. And I've had a just huge number of people, well, huge for me, more than two, contact me over the past couple of weeks. And most of them have been looking to do some sort of setting up some sort of home studio situation. And a large majority find themselves teaching music lessons from home, either finishing out their university semester teaching or teaching high school students, junior high students, or just private lessons, And for a lot of people, as you all well know or can imagine, a lot of people are looking at quite a reduction in income, if not a complete loss of income. So one thing that had become clear to me, and I was talking about it with a couple of good friends of mine, is trying to help people set up a way that they can teach and communicate, but do it on not using a huge budget. So for anyone that spent more than 10 seconds looking at audio gear, it can get very expensive very fast. And it's hard to know when you're starting out what you need and what you don't need. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. If you have any experience in audio, this tonight may be a little basic for you. But that's okay. Just like any good musician, it all starts with fundamentals and understanding what it is you're doing and what you need. So that's kind of my goal tonight, is to look at where you should start. And we're going to talk about a number of things. The first thing I'd like for you to think about is what the goals of your home studio are. And, we already talked about teaching. That can be a goal for a lot of people. Some people may just want to set up for Zoom conferences or similar that sounds good, that blocks out all the stuff going on in their house, or at least some of it, most of it. And some people may want to develop a setup, sort of a studio quality setup to record instrumental overdubs or record duets or other things, either for students or sometimes for recording productions. There's a lot of remote recording that goes on these days, and I don't have to tell you that I only see more of that headed our way, obviously, but I think it's been coming for a while, and I think it's going to continue to get even more prevalent in the industry as we go forward here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris Clark. I'm a performing musician. I'm a trombone player in the President's Own U.S. Marine Band here in Washington, and I'm still an active duty Marine. I've been in the band a little over 20 years, and about 4 or 5 years ago, I became very passionate about audio, and particularly about the way musicians and artists can communicate through audio recordings. Lately, that's become also a lot of video production, and very recently, live streaming audio. So part of this series is a chance for me to do a little live streaming and kind of get my feet wet in that department. Um, this is an odd setting for those of you who perform and you're used to having an audience and interacting with people, and it feels very much like talking to yourself. So forgive me if it feels a little strange at times. I want to direct you to the comments. I do plan on taking some questions tonight, and I'll try to get to anything you all have. So let's start off with our goals. And once you define your goals, then you can kind of start to figure out what it is that you need. What I'm going to address tonight is a basic setup that will work for private teachers, people looking to have a clear way to communicate via teleconferencing, Zoom, that kind of avenue. We might get a little bit into studio recording at home, although I plan to kind of save that for a later session. So I felt like if there's enough interest, and I tend to kind of over explain things sometimes. I'm sorry. So I figure I can't get through everything I want in an hour. So we'll do another one of these if there's enough. If you didn't notice too, I did say in the description this is and happy hour. So I hope that you are relaxing and finding a little time to enjoy yourself tonight. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to be here. So one of the things I wanted to start talking about right away was budget. And this is doable without spending a ton of money, which is the good news. And it only becomes more affordable all the time. Even since I got interested in audio about 4 years ago, the amount of quality, inexpensive gear has increased a ton. And things that used to be thousands of dollars are now hundreds of dollars, which can still be expensive, but it's a lot more obtainable than it used to be. Obviously, if you want to get recording, the biggest thing you need to have, in my opinion, is a computer of some sort. You can use a phone and you can use a tablet. It's definitely possible. And there are a lot of microphones and inputs and things that work with both iOS devices and Android devices. I am not an expert on those things. I have not spent a great deal of time. I tried some things a couple of years ago. I was not impressed, and I'm sure that they've gotten better. And I'm sure that there are more options out there that I'm not aware of. But I think if you're going to try to set up something that will last you for a while, you want to simply look for things that are more versatile and have a little more staying power. With the phones and everything changing as frequently as they do, and the connections and all of those things changing, it becomes very hard to buy a piece of gear and hang on to it for a long time. I'm a big fan of the buy once, cry once philosophy. So, a lot of things I buy, I may not buy the top of the line, but I buy something that will last, for a while. I also don't buy things until I'm sure that I'll really use them a lot. So going through that, we've talked about a computer. Why a computer? Well, the computer will allow you to have a lot more control over what you do. If you want to get into more serious recording, you'll be ready to do it. You'll certainly be able to install software like Pro Tools. Reaper is something I'm a big fan of, which I'll get to this stuff later on, but it gives you more flexibility. And likely a lot of you already have a computer of some sort anyway. So that's why I think it's a really good place to start. After a computer, we get into microphones and an interface. Microphones, first of all, you may be very well served with a USB microphone. And in fact, that's what I've been recommending to a lot of people. And someone asked, Leanne asks, when you say computer, does that include a laptop? Absolutely. I would say that's probably the best option. I have a desktop computer that I use for a lot of projects. However, I find myself using my laptop almost, I wouldn't say exclusively, but a great percentage of the time. You can take it anywhere. It's always there with you. It's easy to move around. If you're going to buy one computer, my suggestion is to buy a laptop. So back to microphones, USB mics work great. And the reason USB mics have become so popular is that to get a signal, a microphone level signal into the computer, you have to have an interface of some sort. The interface is the thing that takes that analog signal from the microphone and converts it to a digital signal and takes it into your computer so that you can then do stuff with it. An interface can be a separate device. And in fact, tonight I'm talking to you on, I have a microphone and I have a separate interface that microphone goes into that takes that signal, converts it to digital, and sends it to my computer. A USB mic has that built in. The reason they're so convenient is that there's no separate interface. It's actually built into the microphone, and you connect it by USB, and it's all done internally in the mic, and it's there with you wherever you go. So from a convenience standpoint and a price standpoint, it's a great option. If you're looking for a solid teaching setup or something for Zoom or whatever, that's probably the best place to start. It's very convenient. The reality of having to drag a laptop and an interface and a microphone and a mic stand and all that stuff with you everywhere is just not practical most of the time. I'm actually a big fan for everyday communication of my Apple AirPods. I think they sound terrible, but they are super convenient. And most of the time, convenience is what we need. So it's kind of the old adage of if you have a huge SLR still camera, yet you find yourself taking photos exclusively on your iPhone, it's generally because you don't feel like dragging that big camera around with you everywhere. And then what good is it? So USB mics are a great option. There's a number out there. I've been recommending a lot this Audio Technica AT2020, which is great. I'm going to post some of this stuff in the chat later. There's some links to buy these mics. They have been selling out lately because, as you can imagine, so many people are working to get set up in this type of situation. So we can talk a little about microphone types maybe later. I'll get to that. I know there was some interested in that. Just real quick, the two you'll find the most useful in the home studio setting tend to be dynamic mics on the one hand and condenser mics on the other. And without getting too far into the weeds, dynamic mics are mics like this. This is a Shure SM57. It's a very inexpensive mic used on countless recordings, often for snare drum and drum set recording. They are very durable. However, dynamic mics need a separate interface. This is not a USB mic, so you have to have an interface to send that signal into the computer. Condenser mics, the USB mic I recommended, the 2020 Audio Technica, is a condenser. Condensers tend to be a little more sensitive, and by sensitive I mean that they can be a little further away from you or from your instrument, still produce a very detailed sound. Dynamic mics, you tend to need to be closer to. And these have a really great selling point for home studios in that they tend to block out a lot of the surrounding noise. So you can probably see over my left shoulder, there's a blanket under my door. So there's Netflix and chill going on in the room outside. So I don't hear much of that, but there's a little bit there. Dynamic mics are great for that. There's also on the other side of the wall behind where my computer is my home's furnace and HVAC. And once you start really listening to your home and the sounds it makes, it can be very loud and annoying. So any recording I want to do down here, I have to figure out a way to at least mitigate that sound enough that I can make a usable recording. For talking online, for teaching lessons online, that's not that big a deal, but that is a real nice feature of a dynamic mic. So dynamic mics, condenser mics, if you think you may want to do a lot of studio quality recording, a condenser might be a good way to go. There's certainly a lot of high quality condensers. They get very expensive. You can spend thousands of dollars on a condenser mic. You don't have to, but you can certainly spend a lot more on that than you can on a dynamic mic. There are two dynamic mics, not to get into numbers and stuff too much, but a lot of podcasts you see, there's a Shure SM7B. It's a huge, fat microphone, and people usually speak very close to the mic. And the reason they do that is with a dynamic mic, the closer you get this thing called proximity effect, and it brings out the bass frequencies in your voice more, and it sounds great on the radio or for broadcast purposes. Someone says for grand pianos, what would you recommend? Definitely condenser mics, and likely a pair of condenser mics. If you're really on a budget, I would say buying a single USB condenser mic can work. Piano, you get the best sound with a stereo pair of mics on the piano, and miking a grand piano is kind of a entire degree program in and of itself. There's a million ways to do it, and a little more than I wanted to get into tonight. Grand trumpets. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a grand trumpet, folks. There's other kinds of trumpets, but generally any mic that doesn't pick up very much is what you want for a grand trumpet. No, seriously. For brass instruments, things at home, these dynamic mics are awesome. There's another type called a Electro Voice RE20. It's a really ugly mic, but they sound fantastic, and they're not terribly expensive. So that's cool. Seth asked about ribbon mics for trombone. Ribbon mics are my favorite type of mic. They sound absolutely fantastic, and ribbons have a very cool feature. So before I get to ribbons, maybe let's talk about a couple other things, because that's kind of a little far down the path of where I want it to go. But I will try to remember that, Seth, and get back to it. But real quick with ribbons, when we're talking about blocking out sounds in a space, people are afraid of ribbon mics sometimes because they have a pattern that picks up all the sound in front like a cardioid mic, but also all the sound in back like an omnidirectional mic. However, ribbons have a really cool feature, and they are also commonly, the pattern is called a figure of eight pattern. And so when you have that figure of eight on the sides where it comes in, it's called the off-axis rejection of a figure eight is amazing. If you have a figure eight, and let's say I'm playing trombone here, and I want to block out what's to the side of me, if I put the thing I want to block out in that side of that ribbon mic, you can barely hear it. It's really incredible how much they block that out and how useful they are for a lot of settings. So that's definitely something to experiment with. Gain levels on ribbons, they tend to need a lot more gain. So if you buy a very inexpensive interface, it might not have enough gain it will have enough gain to drive the mic, but you may get a lot of noise from the interface because you have to turn the gain up so high. There are things you can do. You can also have that problem with dynamics mics. Anyway, take some experimenting. But ribbons have a great sound. Most of our favorite studio recordings in LA are made on ribbon mics, Royers, AEAs, all of those. Yeah, I've heard of the metric halos, Seth, but I don't know that one in particular. The best thing I can say is to experiment and use your ears and see what you hear. Um, we'll talk a little more about mic placement a little later because I think that's really important. Andrew asks experience with iOS devices with a mic plug into the Lightning port. I've used one a little bit. I've not used one with a newer iOS device. I definitely have heard recordings made with them that sound really good. So again, if you find something that works for you, you think it sounds good, and most often it's portable and you're actually going to use it, I would say go for it. Um, one of the rules with recording is that you have to trust your ears, and there's so many things to think about with recording, and you don't have to be a professional engineer to do what you do well. Like I set out wanting to learn to record myself playing trombone, and that was important to me. And you start with one simple thing and you go from there, just like playing an instrument. You build on what you know and you try to do the fundamentals well, and that's where some of these things kind of come in. Okay, sorry, I keep looking over here. I have some notes here, things I wanted to talk to you all about. So the next thing I want to talk about is headphones. First thing is, why wear headphones? Why don't I just listen to the audio through my speakers? The biggest thing with headphones is isolation. And, like I said earlier, if there's other things going on in my house, I can keep you all from hearing them by using the right kind of microphone and by putting it in a place that makes sense. I can keep myself from being distracted by all those things by having a good pair of closed back headphones. Again, like all our audio gear, you can spend a ton on headphones. You don't have to spend a lot. There are lots of great options. I'll put some in the chat later. Monitoring what you're hearing coming through the recording can be a different thing, especially when you're talking about putting audio into a computer. There's this magical thing called latency, and all latency means is that from the time the sound goes into this microphone, into the interface, and then into the computer and out the headphone jack of the computer, it takes time. Latency is normally measured in milliseconds, but you can certainly tell when things are late. And I didn't measure it. There may be a slight delay with my my speaking and the video on YouTube tonight. I did compensate for that a little bit, but I haven't actually measured it. So if you're seeing that, that's what that is from. The video comes and then the audio comes a little, usually a little before it. So, so with headphones, that's one of our main reasons. Also, if you have your laptop speakers sitting here and that sound is coming out towards the mic, even a cardioid mic like this, some of that sound from the speakers goes into the mic, and that creates a feedback loop. So you can get, if you ever are on stage and you hear a high squeal, it's really loud, it's because the PA is on and the mic is in front and the sound is going straight into that open microphone. So it's a big problem in live sound and concerts. It's why a lot of times the musicians stand behind the PA speakers so that that sound is not hitting that mic directly. So that's what we want to avoid with our laptop. It's a much smaller scale, but it can still be kind of a problem. Just reading a couple of questions here. Yeah, Chris asked about a $3,000 trumpet ribbon mic. Yeah, totally. I think you're kind of getting into the area of wanting a studio quality sound from your home studio or your parking garage studio or wherever it is you have to practice these days. But a ribbon, they just sound awesome. They sound great on voice. And I think if you're serious about that kind of recording, you ought to think about it at least, and then get a interface that will pair well with that microphone. The links I'll post in the chat later. I buy all my audio gear from a place called Sweetwater Sound. They're out in Indiana, and I've got a sales rep there that is a great guy. And if I need something and I'm not sure what to get, I just call him and say, "Hey, Bob, I need a new mic. I'm recording this instrument in this way. What do you recommend?" And they've not steered me wrong yet. So definitely something to research and listen to recordings as much as you can. Andrew asked, what microphone would you recommend to students who want to have better recordings? So with students, it really becomes a matter of, do they have money to spend on one? And if they do, will they actually use it? So as I said earlier, with all this gear, if you don't use it or you don't set it up correctly, it's really not worth the time and money. For a student, I'd say a USB mic would be awesome. I think that a lot of this stuff you buy and you kind of use it until you outgrow it, and sometimes that can take a while, especially if you buy a quality gear. So I'd probably start them out with the USB mic if they can afford to do that. Yeah. Oh, Chris, do different interfaces work differently with different mics? The short answer is yes. Ribbon mics, there are a few rules for ribbon mics, at least older unwritten rules or written rules in some cases. Ribbon mics don't require, passive ribbon mics don't require phantom power. This mic does not require phantom power. Dynamic mics don't need electrical power to record and to pick up sound. Condenser mics do. So if you buy an interface and you have a condenser mic, you've got to be able to have phantom power on your interface. Ribbon mics, there's a lot of people who say you should never turn on phantom power with a ribbon. It can blow out the ribbon. Some mic makers say yes, some say no. The best rule of thumb is to just not turn it on if you have a ribbon mic connected. But that being said, you can't really buy an interface these days that doesn't have phantom power, so you just have to know that. Also, with a ribbon mic, you never blow into it. The way ribbon mics are constructed, ribbons are thinner than a human hair. I mean, it's a piece of metal held between two magnets, and it will absolutely blow out that thin little piece of metal. Now, ribbon mics can be repaired. They can be re-ribboned at the factory, so it's not the end of the world, but it definitely would cost you some bucks. Keith asked, do you wear a smaller set of headphones while playing? Actually, I don't. I have a larger tenor trombone, and it doesn't hit these. These are biodynamics, and it works for me. I don't know if it's the way I play or what. I've seen people that need something smaller, and if you need something smaller, you just need to get something smaller. And I don't. I like to have both headphones on my ears as long as I can hear myself through the headphones. So, in a large ensemble recording, you might not have that luxury of being able to hear yourself through the headphones due to what's going on around you. Someone asked, what is phantom power? So condenser mics are powered by a 48 volt current, and phantom power is simply the non-technical term that's commonly used to describe that voltage that goes into the condenser to help it record. Steve asks, so the type of mic you get will limit what application you can use to record. Yeah, it can limit it. I'm not sure I really understand your question. I think what you're asking is, are the mics that you plug into an iPhone, do they have the same capabilities as one that might plug into a laptop, if I'm getting you right? and they can. I'd say that's something to definitely research and ask somebody that knows. I don't have enough experience with iPhone or iOS device mics to know to really be able to answer you. I know that Apogee makes a really good microphone that plugs into Lightning connectors on Apple devices. I've heard good things about them. It's a good company. They make a lot of other really good gear. So I would say that's a good place to start. My always my worry with the Lightning connector stuff is that Apple's going to change their mind, and you know, 9 months from now, you won't have it. You'll have an adapter, but the stuff tends to become obsolete a little more. Phil asks, what would you recommend for Zoom teaching? I think a USB mic is great, Phil. And one of the things, and maybe this is a good chance to talk about mic placement and setup. One of the things for Zoom that's hard, especially when you're teaching lessons, is being able to both talk and play. And, without a complicated setup with multiple mics, it can be a pain. The biggest help I've found with Zoom is being able to place the mic in a place that serves both things well. And so the way I have this set up is it kind of works for trombone because I can speak into it, and I have the level set in a way that hopefully my voice is loud enough, but it's not so loud that when I turn to play trombone, it's going to blow out the microphone. And the reason I say turn is that, like, I'm sitting with my desk here in front of me, and so I would have, if I were teaching, I would have my horn, well, where it is, and I would pick it up and play this way. So the mic is still back over here, kind of looking over my shoulder at where I'm at the bell of the horn, really. But I'm not playing right into it. And obviously it would take some experimenting. You really have to spend some time. It depends on your room. It depends on the desk you have. And, it does help to have a mic stand that has a boom arm, and you can move it around and put it where you need to put it. That helps a lot. I would start with that. The other option would be to have your laptop and your mic here to talk to your student, and then to be able to back up across the room farther away and play from a distance. For those of you who are into photography, sound works just like light. Kind of the inverse square law applies to sound as it does to light. So the further you move, twice the distance isn't half. It's an exponential decrease in sound level. So without trying to remember all my fundamentals of audio off the top of my head, that helps a lot. So creating distance can decrease the level going into the mic. That way you're not having to constantly change the level of your mic depending on whether you're playing or talking. So again, I like to make things as simple as possible and try to get them set up so I don't have to futz with it at all while I'm playing. Let's see. Sam says he has an AT2020 with an amp. Okay, so yeah, cool. Good question, Sam. So setting up mic placement, especially as it goes close to the instrument, I like to do what's called putting the mic off axis. So for those of you who, you've seen a lot of big bands play, you watch the trombone and trumpet players. Get my headphones here where I can move. And, the mic is like right in the bell. It's right in the bell. And one of the reasons for that, and the reason your engineers with a big band or something may want to do that, is that they want to block out the person next to you. If you put a mic on your lead alto, you don't want to go to turn up the volume and get more lead trombone in that mic. So they want it really close. But when we're by ourselves at home, we don't have to worry about that. So what's called an off-axis mic placement looks more like this. You can't really see that very well. The mic is kind of a 45-degree angle situation and a little bit far away. And this is where your experimenting really can help. But, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, with my playing, especially in the morning, if I have the mic jammed down my bell, I'm getting a lot of undesirable qualities of my playing coming through the recording. So I found that by placing it at an angle, usually a 45-degree angle, sometimes elevated a little, seems to get a much better sound. The same placement works great with a ribbon mic. I have a ribbon mic here at home that I use, and that placement works great. And then if I can combine that with pointing the side of the ribbon mic at my noisy furnace on the other side of the wall, I can really get pretty good recorded sound at home. So hopefully that answers that. I don't use a pop filter for trombone. I just don't think it helps any. Pop filters are really for vocalists when they're right up on the mic and you get P's and B's and stuff. And that's another thing that can be helped with a off-axis mic. Vocals from the side slightly, that can help that. I have a real pet peeve of podcasts, and it's probably because a lot of them are recorded like this situation tonight, where they're recorded live. I listen to a couple of really well-known podcasts that drive me insane, and it's the S's, and there's a thing called a de-esser, which is a type of compressor you can use, and also very good for piccolo trumpet sound, for all you trumpet players out there. Anyway, just those little things you can experiment with, and placing the mic, and, recording yourself a lot at home. That's one of the things that I feel like this whole place we find ourselves may help people, is it will force a lot of us and a lot of our students to record themselves more and to really think about how they sound and how that sound is communicated to an audience. And that's where recording for me has been such a fun and rewarding thing to think about. Okay, I think that kind of covers mic placement. Yeah, we talked about that. So if those of you who are teachers, I am by no means an expert on teaching platforms. I've done a fair amount of online teaching, and more lately as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that are out there. Like you have, I suspect, like me, spent way more time on Zoom in the past 3 weeks than you probably ever wanted to. And I call it getting zoomed out. I come in at night and I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like I've been staring at a screen for many hours, which some days I have. But I find that it's probably a pretty good option for teaching. There's definitely a lot of audio settings that need to be enabled in Zoom, or disabled in some cases. And I made a separate video about that, so I'm not going to go into great detail on that. However, I did discover today an interesting thing about Zoom. And I always wondered in Zoom, when you go to the audio settings in Zoom, there are some advanced settings. I think suppressing background noise is one. And there's also an echo cancellation. And I had thought I wanted to be able to turn off that echo cancellation, and you can't. It's on automatic. However, there's also an option in Zoom to use original sound. And I believe, from what I have read and what I can hear, that what using original sound does is it uses the sound from your microphone without modifying it in any way in Zoom. And what Zoom does with echo cancellation is, especially if you have, how earlier I said if you have your sound coming from your laptop speakers directed into your microphone, you can create a kind of a feedback loop. So Zoom has a way to cancel that echo out so that it doesn't create feedback and interference. And they do it through phase cancellation, if that means anything to you. If it doesn't, that's okay. You're not as big of a nerd as me. Um, so if you want to use that original sound, which in theory should get you better sound quality, then you need to wear headphones, because then you don't have the sound coming out of the headphones or out of the computer speakers into your headphones. So again, something to experiment with a little bit. I heard about a really cool teaching platform yesterday. I have a real good friend who I went to Interlaken with in high school. He's a fantastic Israeli euphonium player that teaches in Switzerland now, named Eran Levy. And Eran was telling me about a software developed by an Israeli musician called My Master. And it's a way for teachers to receive video submissions from their students. It kind of sounds like Flipgrid a little bit to me, but it has a feature that allows you to pause the student's video and make comments in that exact spot. So the student can be playing, pause their video, make a comment about what they just did, and then they can go back and watch the video with your comments and go back and practice what you said. And Eran told me he uses it and gets daily feedback from a lot of his students. And he said it's been really effective with his young players, especially because they're not waiting a week between lessons, where they're home essentially practicing things wrong. So it's kind of cool. It is a paid service. I don't know how much it costs. I didn't look at the pricing, but it's an interesting way to teach. Flipgrid is something that I'm intrigued by. I haven't used that yet, although I think I will be soon for my children's school, which is going online. And I've heard of a lot of music teachers who use it too and do kind of the same thing. They give their students weekly assignments that they submit via Flipgrid for the teacher to review. And then they have their online lesson and they already have things to talk about, which seems like a really good way to do it. That's kind of my impression lately with a lot of this online communicating, is that, an online connection is not a replacement for live lessons. I just don't see any way that it ever will be. To be able to stand next to a professional orchestral musician or watch a professional pianist up close or anything else you can think of, you just can't quite yet communicate that through live video and audio or recording. You can get close and there's some cool things about it, but I think it's kind of going to be a combination of things in the future that will help us to do these things. Anyway, what else are we going to talk about? So that's kind of what I have tonight. I don't know if anyone has any more questions or not. I've been talking for a long time. You all have been great questions. Thanks a lot. I have some plans to maybe do another one of these in a week or two. I had some more questions about, I don't know, maybe people want to get into the weeds more on microphones and placement and that kind of stuff. I didn't talk about DAWs at all tonight. If you want to get into recording yourself at home, a modern DAW, GarageBand is a great place to start. Logic Pro is super as well. That's what I kind of got started with. I would really recommend you check out a program called Reaper if you're interested in home recording. It's very affordable. It does everything Pro Tools and the other quote-unquote professional DAWs do, and it works great. It's what I've made all my recordings with for the past 3 years, and I love it. Leanne asked, do you suggest higher Wi-Fi? Yeah, absolutely. So one of the problems with Zoom is that, and sorry, Leanne, I don't remember if you were one of the people that was coming at this from a teaching angle, but Zoom definitely, one of the ways Zoom is able to make teleconferencing so easy is it compresses everything so much. And so it compresses the video, it compresses the audio, and at least with audio, as you compress audio, things get removed from the audio signal so that you can make it smaller and make it fit through a smaller pipe, if you will. And with music, the thing that gets removed are just different frequencies. So especially high frequencies get removed. That's why compressed audio can sound so terrible. And I've noticed it on Zoom lately with poor connections. It really does get pretty bad pretty quick. So yeah, internet speed is paramount. And with Zoom, if you can hardwire an Ethernet cable to your router at home, you'll get faster speeds, generally speaking, than if you're on Wi-Fi. So that's something to try. It's definitely helpful. If you go to speedtest.net on your laptop, you can run a good speed test and see just what you're getting. I know a lot of people are having a hard time with that. So yeah, anything you can do to help that is great. Wow, we're almost at an hour. That's pretty awesome. I talk a lot. Jeez. Okay. Unless anyone pops up in the chat in the next few seconds with something else, I want to tell you all thanks for being here. I hope you're all healthy and you're finding some time to relax and maybe do some things that you don't normally have time to do. I know I am. It's been a lot of fun, and just hang in there. So let me know if you want to do this again. I'd love to hang out. We could also try a Zoom meetup sometime if anyone wants to do that, just for grins. It might be fun to see if we can get something good happening on that platform as well. So anyway, appreciate it. You all take care. I'll see you soon.